Now watch and pay attention before you do this yourself. We have our layout set up nicely here in Unity, so everything is nice and organized. We have our scene set up. So now we're actually going to create our very first C# script to be able to control this vehicle's movement. In order to do that, we're going to go to our project window and then make sure you right-click on the Assets folder. And then you're going to go to the Create button, and we're going to create a new folder. We're going to name this folder Scripts, because this will actually be holding all of the scripts that we'll use to manage all of the interactions in our game. Now, it's very important, especially as you start a project, to keep all of your different folders organized, so that way it's easier to find all of the different things that you need, whether it's your assets that you're using in your scene, like in our course library, or different scenes that we need to manage, or in this case, our scripts, so that way we know where all of our programming is being done. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to make sure it gets added to the scripts folder. So we right-click over our scripts folder, and we create a C# script. Now we're going to name this script Player Controller, capital P, Player, capital C, no spaces, Controller. Now, when we press Enter, Unity will automatically create this script for us, and we can actually preview it on the side. So you might be wondering to yourself, why did we capitalize the P and the C, and why are there no spaces? Well, this is actually something called a naming convention, and this is just a standard thing that developers do and people do when they're creating their projects as a way to make it easier for other people to jump into somebody else's project. So if somebody were to play around in your Unity project, they could understand the scripts and all the things that they're supposed to do and what they are. So capital letters for each word in a script makes it really easy for people to know that what you have is a script right there. Another reason to name scripts up front is because it can actually create a pretty large problem in Unity. So what I'm going to do is on my scripts folder, if I right-click on it and I click Create C# script, and I don't know what to name this script for now, so I'm just going to call it Test. And so here you can see that the test script is created, and you can see that it's previewed over in the inspector. Now, say later down the line, I want this to do something. I don't know, maybe for some reason I want to make the obstacle fly or something like that. And then I press Enter. So we've renamed this script to be obstacle fly, but in our inspector, you can see the preview of our script. It's still called test, even though we just changed it. So this could actually potentially break things in your project and create conflicts between the name of what you have in Unity and the name of your script. And so it's just better to name everything up front, name it exactly what you want it to do, and make sure that you use the standard naming convention, so that way it's easier if other people have to jump into your projects. So I'm going to just right-click on obstacle fly, and I'm going to delete this from my scripts folder because we don't need it. So we have our player controller script now, and we're going to left-click and drag it onto our vehicle. And now, if I click on my vehicle, you should see on the right side in the inspector that there's a player controller script that's been added to our vehicle. Now, scripts are the way that we're going to actually create all of these different interactions for any of our obstacles, our vehicles, even our camera in our environment. And so when we want something to do something, we need to use scripts to be able to tell Unity what we want that thing to do. In this case, our player controller script will make it so we can actually move our vehicle and control it. In addition, when we dragged our player controller script onto our vehicle, you can see that it was added here in the inspector. And so it was added to our list of different components. And so our components are basically the different properties that we can see attached to all of the objects in our scene. So, for example, our vehicle has our transform, so it can control the position in the world, how it's rotated and oriented, the scale. We added our player controller script, so we know that we're going to create a behavior for this vehicle. And then there's other things too, like mesh renderers and mesh colliders, both of which we'll get into later. A mesh renderer just helps to actually enable Unity to show you the vehicle with all of these textures applied onto it. And the collider will actually be something we use later so that we can have our vehicle run into our obstacle. Now, for example, if we went onto our obstacle and we accidentally added our player controller, which we can also do by left-clicking and dragging onto our inspector if the selected object is highlighted, we can add it that way, but I don't want the player controller on this obstacle, so I can click this gear icon next to it, and we can actually remove that component. Or if I wanted to add a component another way, I could also click the Add Component button, and you can actually see all the different components that you could use if you ever wanted to, or you can just type in the name, so we have that player controller, added it there, but we don't want it on our obstacle at all, so we're just going to click on the gear, remove that specific component, and we're good to go. So what you're going to do is you're going to right-click on your Assets folder, create a new folder, name that folder Scripts, so that way we can see where all of our scripts in our game are being managed and organized. On the Scripts folder, you're going to right-click directly onto it and create a C# script, which you will name Player Controller, capital P, no space, capital C. And then you're going to add the player controller script either by left-clicking and dragging it and dropping it onto our vehicle, or if you select the vehicle by clicking on it, you'll see it pop open in the inspector. You can left-click and drag the player controller into the list of components, or if you have your vehicle selected, you can click on the Add Component button. You can type in the search bar and type in Player, and that'll pop open your player controller script that you can see here, and you can add it that way. Now it's your turn.